Fuck it. We'll do it live. Welcome to Evil Dojo. Your boy sick with the sick flow. If I sound gunked up as fuck, that's because it's raining. The rain always fucks my allergies up. You'd be like, why don't you just don't stream until you feel better? And it's like, well, if I did that, then you might never ever see me stream because it's very hard to predict when things are going well enough for me to feel that way, or to feel that, oh, I'm in better feeling now than I was before, so maybe let's stream. But sometimes you just got to push yourself to operate in a space where things are just not perfect, but you want to get stuff done anyway. And because it's raining, I can't predict when I'm gonna have to take care of Grace Face with regards to her bathroom break, because she don't like to go when it's raining. Because she don't like to get wet. I don't like to get wet. Nobody likes to get wet. And when you gotta go though. So for times like that, I'm thankful that we have a patio and I can take her, go do the business, and she will walk around for a bit reluctantly, not wanting to do anything, but eventually not being able to hold it anymore, and then she has to go. Better to do that than her to, go on the couch, right? Because that's no fun either. And you got that to deal with. I've got back issues going on right now. I'm like still working out a lot of my morning aches and pains, but unless I'm gonna have to get more coffee here in just a little bit. And I'm only gonna be able to be on for like an hour or so because I have a meeting at like 1 or something like that. You see, like, the way that I look on camera sometimes doesn't necessarily conform to how my back feels, right? Because, like, you ever have, like, really bad posture and you're not sure which part of your body is fucking you up? But as soon as you, like, look in a mirror, you get, like, this feedback loop going where you can kind of, like, gauge out where, like, needs to be stretched, or, like, where, like, on your body you might be having issues. And it gives you some sort of information, because there is no universal standing up straight. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's got a different posture, everyone's got a different back. And I think sometimes attempting to hoist things up in positions that just aren't natural for you can lead to more problems than otherwise. That's why I try to avoid putting things on top of the, in like the tallest part of the cabinets. I don't use that shit. I'm a short dude. Short dudes do what they gotta do. Which sometimes me, in the past when I was growing up, I'd be like literally climbing on top of the counters just to get shit at the top of the cabinet. And then after a while, like, after all the injuries I've incurred, I literally, like, experience pain attempting to, like, go up too high. It's even, like, looking in the camera right now, like, I see how I'm doing my arms, and it's like, okay, well, that's a good sign because normally I've been throwing my left arm out of socket really bad, and it's been hard to figure out what is natural or like what the pre-injury state was like, if that makes sense. I haven't even checked chat. So I originally was titling the stream Late Night C++ Game Dev, but it's now Sunday Morning Game Dev. We don't have that long to get rolling here, so let's get some music on. So I discovered that my make file was not behaving as it should have, and I fixed it yesterday. As a result, now I actually get all the warning information again. Yo, Dulce, how's it going, man? Yeah, I need to get some tea, honestly. I drink way too much instant coffee lately. It's so good, though. I'm able to make it perfect. Strong as shit. Sweet as shit. And, like, literally kills my appetite for a little bit. Not so great in the long term. Let's go. Excuse me. Check this out, y'all. You're gonna like this. Ready? We've got inventory. I was pretty happy with this. Now, while I'm not printing any information about each item yet, this is still like a really good start. So, one of the low-hanging fruits I could knock out like right now is displaying the name of the item beneath it. Or on top. I'm not sure where it should go, actually. Maybe on top, that'd be easier to read. Right? UI is not fun, dude. UI is not fucking fun. You get the fuck out of here with that shit, dude. Calm the fuck down. UI is not fucking fun. Oh my god. If UI were fun, I would have accepted one of those fucking JavaScript front-end developer jobs back in like 2011, 2012 when I was getting inbox hard as fuck by LinkedIn recruiters. They were like, please sir, we need JavaScript UI front-end and React.js, $120,000 starting, San Francisco, on-site only, must move out here. And I'm like, y'all can suck my fucking dick. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. I don't want no fucking front-end JavaScript nothing. Fuckers. Meanwhile, this game's web front end is basically WASM. So, who am I to talk, right? But, no. UI is not fun. Front end is not fun. This is necessary things that I have to build now. It's like, I don't want to have to build this. But in order to make a better game, make the experience better, to make it... See, what I find more fun than UI is UX. Thinking through the problems associated. Like, because UI and UX are tangent to each other, right? But, like, I so dislike having to think about that stuff that I will just minimalist the fuck out of my UIs so that I don't have to think too hard about them. People who are better at UI than I am understand nuance. However, there is nuance in user experience as well. And one thing I think about that relates to UI, but isn't UI, is user workflow. I think about number of actions needed to take to accomplish a thing. I think about what someone has to do in order to accomplish a task or a thing. Like, for instance, to bring up the inventory, you press I. And previously, I only had the escape key map to exit it. But I added in a keybind so that while you're on the inventory screen, you can press the I key again to close it. And that feels better because, like, you can kind of rapid fire press the same key and it just, like, boom boom, in and out. One of the other things that I'm gonna have to do eventually, I'm kind of putting it off for a little bit, but I'm already thinking about doing it, is something that I did with the other, some of the other, like, screens, and eventually this process is going to get applied to, like, every single applicable drawable thing. Because at the end of the day, the frame rate's not so... Like the number of frames required to actually, like, update every frame, or, like, I should say, the number of textures that are needed to update every frame is rather minimal. It's not like we're animating every single piece of this right now, right? Like, the only thing that's actually changing is this dude's animation state. So I cache textures in order to avoid having to, like, update the whole screen. And as you can see, we are running at 60, but the number of frame updates that are occurring during a 60 frame interval is actually much less than 60. And so I do this because naturally you want to pre-compute as much as possible so that you're not, like, wasting resources in the process of trying to do a thing, and you can just kind of, like, lazily access something. And so the problem with the inventory at the moment is that the way I'm rendering it is kind of really silly. It's the kind of thing that should really only be done when the frame is dirty. And at the moment, the inventory screen is actually updating once every 60 seconds. And during that once every 60 seconds, it's actually going through, like, a double nested for loop. And one of the things that emerges out of this is a bit of lagginess when you, like, are navigating between grid spaces in the inventory menu. Y'all can't really tell from where you're at, but trust me, I can feel it. I fundamentally know that there's, like, at least 30 to 60 milliseconds that I'll be able to shave off by properly, like, caching the texture representing the menu, and then only updating it when we, like, actually change position. So UI is not fun, but thinking about like how to make this stuff better is. Like with UI, I'm just like, I just want it done. I don't want to mess with it anymore. You know, it's like, I hate the idea of rebranding. I hate the idea of like changing your style every like 6 months or something like that. And the reason why is that it's a rabbit hole, dude. It's such a rabbit hole. You can get stuck working on UI forever and then never actually do anything. I hope that makes sense. Yo, what's up, turtles? How you doing? What's up, viewers? I am not writing my game UI using Lisp hater. Oh, that's Dulce. Well, whenever, because like when it comes to artistic expression, Dulce, I think about a lot of very, from my perspective, obvious design decisions that fit an aesthetic that I go for. A good example of this is the terminal I'm operating in. This really fits the aesthetic that I like. Black background, gray text, shades of gray bordering, and you know, UI bar. Reasonably colored, you know, syntax highlighting when actually working. But like the other thing too is I know fundamentally that good UI can be engineered into a problem that's less about art and more about like mathematically correct positioning, mathematically correct color decisions, a lot of that kind of stuff. And people who are more experienced with this will find those things intuitive. But if I'm expected to like deviate outside of my own artistic preferences, then shit gets really fucking difficult because I am not a generalist UI person. Some people are though, and those people get paid very well for what they do. It's not my kind of work though. I like implementing code solutions. And that's not to say that like UI people aren't coders, but to me UI is a non-problem. I am using an ECS. I actually wrote this ECS myself. So here's the components. Here's basically the core of the component system right here. We've got a whole table of components followed by a table each for every component type. Each one of them is simply an unordered map. Don't get too distracted by the make shared stuff, because this is really the important parts right here. For instance, the listed, so names, each entity can have a name, and a name is just a string. So what you do is you create a map of entity ID to string, and then make sure that whenever you're creating an entity, to tell it to have the name property, and then assign a name to it. Because otherwise it'll come back as like unnamed, something like that. Well, I'm not saying, well, first of all, I love Persona 3. That's one of my favorite RPGs, dude. I put a lot of time onto that one in college. I think there's a big difference between like being an artist and already knows what you want and then implementing what you want versus being a generalist UI person who is really able to like think beyond their own preferences and be able to implement other people's desires. I've worked for companies that do that. Like that was basically like all my superiors did for my first web developer job. Like they did a lot of the heavy lifting in the beginning, and they showed me how they do their work, and a lot of it was like figuring out what the client wants. I'm actually using Raylib. Yes, someone knows about Raylib. Fuck yeah. I don't need any OpenGL in this, but it does use WebGL and OpenGL for textures. So even though it's a 2D game, I believe Raylib implements OpenGL for textures underneath the hood. I could be mistaken, but I believe that's how it works. So here's libdraw, and libdraw uses a lot of OpenGL stuff. I have a two-step process to generating the sprites. Basically, step one is you have to load a texture in, and the texture contains the sprite sheet for a particular animation. And then we have a map of entity IDs to an object I created called sprite groups. Sprite group is basically an array of sprites, and each sprite represents one potential animation. So like the human, like when you create like the player, you have to load in like each of the different possible animations that you could have, because you might attack, right? Like I haven't re-implemented equipping weapons since I swapped over to the inventory, but this is basically sprite. So it has a pointer to a texture, a rectangle source, and the rectangle is actually Raylib, as is texture. But then I don't necessarily think I need to keep the width, but like I do this because this is a width of, I believe, the whole texture and the whole texture height. So context is something I call, like, if you think of like the frames of a strip of a sprite sheet as being the columns of that sprite sheet, then number of contexts would be the number of rows, because each row in the sprite sheet represents a different direction. And I can actually show an example of this in the game. So as an example of this, he moves and he walks, and if he changes direction, he changes full direction, but he still animates, right? And see, he's idling right now. I'm a step left, and because he's facing in the other direction, I maintain that position while still turning his body. The same thing if you step down. You know, I spent a lot of time thinking about this and implementing it, making sure that there was like a really good one-to-one feeling between like which direction you were moving and what representative direction the character's facing. To me, that's user experience. So, like if you are facing right and down and then you start moving down, you know, you kind of maintain the same thing there. Similarly, if you're going up and left, You know, his body doesn't really change if you're moving in one of those directions. But if you're moving in down, right, or down, see how it kind of maintains? I like that kind of stuff. That was kind of a really interesting and fun nuance to work out. Because without that kind of thing, I feel like the game would feel like a lot more primitive and less realistic. Even though it's just a pixel game, it's just a pixel art game, there is a level of realism or expected behavior or expected performance where most people would expect something to do something in a certain way when they do it. And I hope that when people play this, that meets their expectations. Let me check chat again. I'm chatting with y'all a lot more than I normally do. I don't have any 3D models in my game. This game is entirely 2D. Not exactly a state machine. It's literally just an index. Like, here's how it works. Actually, I have a sprite open. I could even show y'all a sprite sheet. Hold on. There we go. So imagine, if you will, that if you think of like frame as being the column, so there's 4 columns here, so there's 4 frames of animation. But the row refers to a direction that he's facing. And I wanted to create like a very easy one-to-one between like the player's logical direction, which is 8 directions, because you have up, left, up right, left, right, and then down, left, down, and down, right. But you see, the problem here is we only have four directions for the sprite sheet. Up, right, up, left, and then down, right, and down, left. I said that in the wrong order, but whatever. So, first of all, I call the row context. And that's number of contexts right here. So that way, like, I can very easily select not only like which frame of animation to currently draw, but also like which row should be animating to begin with. I also keep track of a number of loops because early on I figured out that certain animations we're only going to want to like loop once before we like go back to a default animation. Default animation ends up being stored on sprite group itself. I'm not necessarily sure that these structs and things are like written the best, but they're written well enough because they work. They've worked for a long time now. This code is almost a year old. I overhauled some parts of it recently, but it mostly retains the same flavor that it did in the C version. People talk about code smell. I don't talk about code flavor enough, though. I did not draw the sprites, no. Yeah, but the handling of the logic of combat is different from the handling of which animation state to handle. So let's take a look at like some logic code, and I can kind of show how like the workflow from one state to another kind of works. So like by default, the player's in an idle animation state. So let me show the default animation state. We'll start here. So I showed you a little bit about how animation works in general. This is the idle animation. It's 16 frames, 4 directions. Pretty straightforward. So what happens when you try to move? When you like walk into another tile? First of all, where is the code for try entity move? Not defined? Oh, we moved it into another file the other day. Okay. So we called try entity move, and then we changed the flag on the game state object to animate player. Oh, sorry, player animate. So during lib draw, we do a simple like flag shift, depending upon like what the current flag is, but liblogic basically passes the fact that like the players put in an input, we need to change state, and then libdraw handles the actual new state. Once it finishes doing that, if there are any NPCs, they take their turns and then animate as well. And then once they finish animating, it goes back to the player. There's like a really tight loop for handling like the shift between handling the player and then handling all of the things, because everything could have totally different animation states, right? And you want to have like a level of cohesion. So here, I'll go to the game loader. So draw frame gets called, right? At the beginning of draw frame, we do this thing called update sprites pre. So like liblogic has the ability to create new entities, and if an entity is created, then it needs to have an attached sprite or sprite group in this case. So when we create an entity, we have to mark dirty entities in order to trigger its creation of a sprite group. So create SG by ID, we'll take an entity ID, and then based off of its components, load up the appropriate texture or sprite sheet. In this case, if we're creating a player or an NPC, we want to check its race. And if it's a human or an orc or an elf or a dwarf or a halfling or a goblin or a wolf or a bat or a warg or a green slime, then we call create sprite group with the only thing that we actually have to change is the keys and the key count, which represents like how many textures we're loading. Like here, over here, we have texture human keys. And each one of these keys represents a value that's defined over here. Like human has 18. So human has 18 textures to load. Notice that in between each one we have a shadow. This is for easy access. I'm currently not drawing the shadow, but it's going to come back in real soon. But it exists as a completely separate layer when you're like compositing all of these different textures together in order to draw the final spray. So we have to create a SG by ID, possibly, if something just got created, right? But once we do that, we can mark dirty entities as false. So for each of these update sprite pre's, we have to grab the sprite group for that entity, and then we have to handle like updating that sprite before we draw it. Let's say you're the player and you just moved. So not only do you have to update like the current frame of animation, make sure it's pointing to the right one, but also you have to make sure that the location on the screen is correct. So whenever any changes happen to like the sprite or like the entity, and we like need to update it for some reason, either because it was previously idling and now he's moving, or if he's previously idling and is now attacking. So we first update the source rectangle based off of the context. I was talking about this earlier. The game has 8 logical directions you can face in, but we only have 4 direction sprites for any humanoid entity. So I had to create a mapping between the 4 corner directions, up, left, up, right, down, left, down, right, and my 8 logical directions. That's this if statement right here. Yeah, this is actually the thing that changes the context. Because each sprite group context is itself just a number. It literally just points to like which row of the sprite sheet we're going to be drawing from. So once we calculate that, we set all of the sprites in the sprite group to use that same context. That way, if excuse me. Let's say you were facing down and now you're facing up because you moved up. And then you like go to attack. Your context doesn't need to change anymore, so we've already correctly set it. So you only ever have to do this like once every time an update occurs. And then we set the update to be off. Next, we also have to update like the location on the screen. I really like my implementation for what I did here. Basically, I create a second rectangle that's associated with every sprite. And I call it sprite move. It used to be called smooth move. That's all the first function in draw frame. A lot of this also contains some of the optimized selections for drawing like precast textures. the final draw to the screen occurs here. These two lines right here allow you to change the size of the window, and the game will stretch to fit the size of your window. Unless you're operating in like traditional 1920 by 1080, it may not look that, or like some sort of ratio similar to that, it may not look as good. Then at the very end, we do a update post. This handles the animation like frame increment. So for instance, for every entity, we grab its sprite group, we grab its sprite, we mark the frame dirty if our animation speed happens to be on a particular interval. My baby just woke up, so we're gonna have to step out to the balcony and do some dirty in a minute. And this I don't think is proper, but it's an easy thing to kind of take a look at. And then we update the game state flag. And I don't even think we necessarily need to do handle dirty entities here because we're actually calling it somewhere else. All right, y'all. Give me a second, all right? Yeah, no, the texture drawing is world coordinates or screen coordinates, however you think about it, but the actual like coordinate system used for the dungeon and stuff is totally separate, and we translate out where to draw on screen based off the camera location, zoom level, and all that kind of stuff. But the logical world representation of the dungeon, totally separate. All right, give me a second, y'all. I gotta do this real quick. Oh, my baby girl's so good. My baby, let me get you a towel. Okay. We're back. Use OpenGL as opposed to what, Armin? Alright, there's a lot to do. Alright, I was going to try and do a low-hanging fruit before I have to go to a meeting. Mhm. Walk off the edge. X, Y, font size, and color. Nice. Could use a little bit of padding. Text might be kind of big. That's not bad. I wonder like how long we'll be able to make stuff, and sometimes I stress out about like dynamic resizing of text and shit. That's one reason I don't like UI. Like Grace, I got some bad news for you. It's still raining. So if you got anything like that you gotta do, we're gonna have to do it on the patio. Patio. Yeah. Alright, so I gotta start getting ready for a meeting here. This is a good check-in, though. Appreciate everyone who's joined for this little short stream. Well, it's afternoon now, technically. All right. Let's check the checkpoint there. And I hope this was educational. Had some people come in, ask some questions. I like that. Could use more of that. In fact, y'all should definitely come by the Discord, which should be in the video description. I am starting to build a small community. Like-minded creatives, hackers, programmers, artists, musicians. We got it all. Evil Dojo's cooking. Let us cook. I got just enough time to get ready for this thing. I'm gonna go and sign off, everyone. I may or may not come back later, but I'm gonna do game dev either way. Actually, it probably won't be until tomorrow because I do have a second meeting later today. Plus I need to be attentive of my girl since it's raining and her bathroom schedule is going to be kind of thrown off as a result. Hey, 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 hey. Talking about you. Hey, hey, hey. Excuse me. Alright, y'all. Until next time, Evil Dojo, signing out. Peace.